Welcome to Family Rosary Presents Through the Mysteries. Join hosts Father David Marcham, Allison Gingras, and Stephen Driscoll as they share their thoughts on how to integrate the Rosary into daily family life. You'll also learn more about the inspiring story of Father Patrick Peyton, a Holy Cross priest, his journey towards sainthood, and why he believed that the family that prays together stays together. Welcome back. We are so thrilled to come to you again with episode 3. We are going to focus on today in this episode with the Father Peyton's kind of more famous message, the family that prays together stays together. We're going to also be sharing our Rosary Mystery Day, and of course we invite you in the comments or wherever you're listening to the podcast, or send us a message and share what kind of Rosary Mystery Day you are having. What we mean by that is that the Rosary should be part of our everyday ordinary life. The messages and the lessons that we learn through the Rosary can help us really guide what happens in our life, kind of look at and measure the kind of day we're having. So we're going to start, as usual, with our what kind of mystery day we're having. And I'm going to start with a nativity day. Because on Christmas, we found out that we are expecting a new baby in our family. I get to be a great aunt. I've always been a pretty good aunt, so now I'm pretty excited to be a great aunt. And the timing couldn't have been more special because that was our first Christmas without my mother-in-law. And so to have the whole family together to get that beautiful news, that blessing, really took that as a grace. Stephen, what kind of Rosary Mystery Day are you having?
Today I'm feeling more along the lines of the proclamation of the kingdom of God.
Whoa.
I know, a mouthful there. In particular, the way I always imagine that is Jesus walking through the crowds proclaiming this great news. But there's a ton of people, so he's swamped. They're everywhere, and it feels very hectic. So that's where I'm at. It feels like a hectic day, but a good day. Always a good day to proclaim the kingdom.
I love that.
Amen, Stephen.
Father David, what about you?
Yeah, Allison and Stephen and our audience, I would say I'm in the joyful category, specifically connected to the visitation. And earlier this week I had a chance, while going to a doctor's appointment at the Braintree Hospital in Braintree, now called another name, to visit the physical therapy department. And I haven't worked there in about 30 years, so I figured there's no chance there's anyone who still works there when I was there. But lo and behold, as I wandered down into the PT outpatient department, and they asked me, "Excuse me, Father, can we help you?" And I said, "Oh no, just a trip on memory lane." And they said, "Well, what's your name?" And one of the therapists said, "Oh, my patient was just asking about you the other day." And I thought, "Wow, isn't that great?" And then the other therapist said, what was your name again? And she said, "Oh, my cousin comes to the Father Peyton Center. It's nice to meet you." And I said, "Well, it's really nice to meet you too. What's your name?" And she told me, and it turned out that I went to school with her brother in junior high. So it reminded me of a couple of things. One is the joy of sharing each other's lives in the visitation that we have every day with different people. And the second thing, it reminded me of the good work that healthcare workers do to help people to get back on their feet again. And great line, one of the patients who was listening to this whole little conversation said, "Excuse me, Father, do you pray for patients?" And I said, "Well, yes, for two reasons." And I said, "First of all, I pray for all the healthcare workers and their patients. Yes. But I say I also pray for the virtue of patience," which, Stephen, I'll pray for you today.
You know, that's kind of interesting because I will not pray for the virtue of patience, because I have learned, and maybe it's just me, but every time I pray for that, the Lord doesn't just magically give it to me. He's decided I have to actually learn it by giving me something to practice such virtue in. And I just, I've decided I just don't need that virtue. I'm good because I don't want to practice patience. So for. But I think it is really important to acknowledge and to thank all our first responders and our healthcare workers. They are essential to all of our lives and often overlooked and receive the brunt of our bad days. So we thank you all for your service and for your dedication. The next thing is we want to do every episode. We wanted to bring in something about Father Patrick Peyton. We are blessed to continue his ministry here at Family Rosary. And we are going to also be diving into the prayers and the mysteries of the Rosary. But I thought before we got too deep into those in future episodes, it really makes sense to kind of connect us a little bit more to Father Peyton and to the two messages that he's pretty much known for. The first is the family that prays together stays together, and maybe a little lesser known and more probably important at this time in life is the world at prayer is a world at peace. So in episode 3 today, we're going to talk about the first one, the family that prays together stays together. And in the next episode 4, we'll dive into a world at prayer is a world at peace. But first, I'd like to go to Father David and ask him to kind of give us the origin, a little bit more about the family that prays together, that stays together.
As we've spoken about before, Father Peyton's goal was to promote family rosary prayer initially in the United States. And he wanted to get 10 million families to pray the rosary. So in order to get the word out, he picked the most effective medium of the time, and that was radio. Father Peyton, through his goodness and the grace of God, was able to enlist the help of radio stars, but also the people who produced and wrote and did the advertising for radio. And it was in that process that he met a man named Al Scalpone, who was one of the top advertising writers in the industry. And through working with Father Peyton, that's how they came up with the family that prays together stays together, a world at prayer is a world at peace. And but the other thing that's interesting is back in the day, these radio dramas were all sponsored by a particular company. So if you sold Chevy cars, partway through the drama would be an ad by a Chevy, for whatever reason, or your dishwashing soap. So in place of that, that's where those phrases would be placed.
Oh, that's neat. I actually didn't know that.
And the idea was, originally Father Peyton wanted to have the rosary prayed on the radio once a week and to have different people do it. But the executives in radio said, you're never going to sell that to advertisers, and it won't work. So he had to adjust, and to get his message out, have these radio dramas that were based on virtue and holiness without explicitly being Catholic or any particular denomination, but the human virtue led to the theological virtue, and he used that phrase or phrases as the advertising or the promotion or the proclaiming of the kingdom, as Stephen just said. I think it's really interesting that when Father Peyton did this, I think when we come down to that, the family that prays together stays together, one of the things I think about is something my mom used to say to my brother and I, 2 years younger, as we'd be leaving for school. Usually after a skirmish had taken place, she would always say, your brothers stick together. And what Father Peyton was recognizing is that the human condition in all families is that we do have our skirmishes, disagreements, hurt feelings, etc. But he believed by coming together in prayer, through asking for the grace of God, our Blessed Mother's intercession, that even if it was only a stalemate for a while, that was progress. And that it would unify us when push came to shove in harder things or more serious things. And I think it's just an important message for us to understand, maybe in a slightly different way, is that Father Peyton's family had to emigrate, some of them to the United States, so they weren't physically in the same place. But what he meant, staying together, yes, ideally living together and being close in the same community. But he was talking about a spiritual connection that can happen when you're apart physically, where you pray either literally together at the same time over the radio or Zoom or whatever, or also being there for one another through whatever means. So I just think it's a great story about how he used the medium of the day, the top people in the day, to communicate a message that the world really needs today.
I agree. That's such a fascinating background. Stephen, what does the family that prays together stays together mean to you?
Well, for one, it's just a great phrase. I think it's obviously so true. In particular, there's an image that's drawn to my mind, a story from Father Peyton's life that really shows that this wasn't just some sort of trick of advertising, but it was a lived experience for him. as you can read in his autobiography, shameless plug,
All for her.
all for her. There was a moment when he was about 11 or 12 where he went down the road to his neighbor's farm. One of their sons had gone off to school or something, or he was sick. I don't remember exactly what happened, but they needed a little help on the farm. And while Father Peyton was there for about a week, he sorely missed the experience of praying the rosary every night with his family. And so the last day, the dad of the household was walking him back down the road to his family's home. And Father Peyton drew up the courage and said to him, as an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, I really think you need to pray with your family every night. You need to pray the rosary. This is why it's good for me and my family. It draws us together. It brings us peace. And I think it would do the same for your family. And that took a lot of courage for a 12-year-old to say. So he left and he figured, oh, well, that probably fell on deaf ears, a man much older than myself. But years later, when he came back as a priest, he saw this guy again, and he shared with him that after that rebuke from a young man, he started praying the rosary with his family every night, and it brought those things forward. It brought peace, it brought unity, and it became a cherished moment for them. So,
Have you ever encouraged somebody to pray?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I have a friend who, after I started getting into the practice of praying the rosary, she was complaining about something. And I said, okay, bring it to Mary, pray the rosary. She said, oh, I've tried the rosary. I don't really like it. It's not for me. It's not great. Whatever, it's not for me. So I said, put that aside. Pray the rosary. And she did, and now she's in the practice of saying a daily rosary, and it's become one of her favorite prayers.
That's wonderful. I think it's really hard to encourage other people to pray. Like, I'm easy to say, oh, I'll pray for you. And then I mean it when I say it. And I always, at the end of my prayer, saying, Lord, and all those people I promised to pray for that I've forgotten their names, but you know who they are. But one of the practices that I got into, because it was very uncomfortable for me to encourage people to pray, that on my Facebook account, I go to adoration, I go to a holy hour once a week, and I would just put up a picture of the beautiful chapel that I was praying in with the message, can I pray for you? And I have been, in the last 10 years of doing this, just absolutely amazed at the response to it. I can sometimes get 100 prayer requests. I have people who will direct message me, private message me, who I didn't even think believed in God. And sometimes they'll admit that. They're like, I'm not sure your God is real, but at this point, I'm willing to give him a try. And I've had just really incredible stories of people coming to time of prayer from my witness, I guess, of my own ability to willingness to pray for others and to encourage people to pray. So I think that's maybe a way if people are thinking, I'd love to encourage people to pray. I know people in my family that need to pray, but you're uncomfortable praying, asking, encouraging or telling them to pray, that maybe the start is you saying, I'll pray for you, or witnessing how you pray. Father, I know that, this is part of your job to encourage, but I bet you even find it difficult, or don't you? You're looking at me like, no, I don't, it's my job.
Okay, so here's the truth, Allison. When I haven't always been a priest, so when I was working in physical therapy, I would not have found it that easy to encourage people to pray. I think I grew up in a family where people would ask my mom to say a prayer for them, or she would offer to do that, and they would. So I saw that, and I kind of grew into that a little bit, but not with a lot of confidence. As far as encouraging people to pray, I don't think I was that comfortable at first doing that. I did feel comfortable with being a bridge with people. So as I was listening to my patients' stories about what they were going through, a lot of times they told me about relationship issues either with God or loved ones. And I used to figure out, okay, what denomination are they? And then I'd encourage them to speak to their priest, their minister, their rabbi. I had no problem with that. I was good at referrals. But
classic doctor.
But I do think it's one of those things that you have to be willing to trust God enough, like Stephen was talking about, to take a chance. If you really care about the person and we really believe in the power of prayer, to humble ourselves, be willing to take a risk and say, you know what, give it a try. Like you did, Stephen. Give it a try, see where it goes.
I was really touched actually yesterday in Mass in your homily. You mentioned as a physical therapist that you would ask people if you could pray for them and actually just let people know that we do have Monday through Friday. We have our Mass here at the Father Peyton Center. If you're not local, you can watch it on Facebook or YouTube, the Family Rosary YouTube or Facebook at noon each day. And then we also share the homilies. And these are some of the most inspiring, and I'm not just saying that because he's staring here looking at me, but our priests here are just, we're really blessed. They have a charism, the Congregation of Holy Cross have a charism of joy. Father David is a Archdiocese of Boston, but he also has a charism of joy.
I'm your cousin.
From Boston.
From Boston.
My daughter is deaf and she likes to give people sign names, and Father David's sign name is the first letter of his name, D, with a smile, because that's what she sees as his greatest quality, is that he's always smiling. Actually, our parish also calls him Father Smiley, but that's beside the point. I invite you to familyrosary.org and look under the blogs to get these homilies each day to really encourage you as you go. I also want to direct you to our YouTube, where we have those dramas, the audio with Lucille Ball and Bing Crosby, and I believe Maureen O'Hare, is she the other one? O'Hara. So to go and really just bring yourself back to that time and really see how faith doesn't change, even though our time changed. God is unchanging and he stays the same. I just want to throw out that when I first heard the family that prays together stays together, I was going through a really difficult time in my own family life. And I remember thinking, as we, my husband and I would try to pray together, that it was helping me keep it together. It was really helping me keep together what at that time felt like it was completely falling apart. And sometimes I couldn't pray the rosary, but I would hold on to the rosary like I was holding Mary's hand, and there was such a peace in that as well. So we would love to know, when you hear the words, a family that prays together stays together, what does this mean to you? What does this bring to mind? Please share that. You can send us a message at mission@hcfm.org or leave a comment wherever you're listening to this podcast. Any other thoughts about Father Peyton's message, the family that prays together stays together?
Yeah, I think right now families are reawakening to the importance of families. Yeah. I think families are looking for means to, as you say, Allison, keep it together personally and as a family. I talk to, as we all do, different folks who are going through different things. It could be health, it could be relationship, it could be financial. There's a lot of things that people are contending with, as they always have. And I think when we talk about our faith and the strength it gives us, I think that's the thing that people, once they try it, will experience, that they feel a sense of peace, a sense of hope, a sense of confidence that they actually can stay together. But I do think we have to be really upfront with people to say, we recognize that some families are not together. There's divorce, there's separation, there's all sorts of estrangement, and things don't always get resolved, in one rosary. So I think we have to be honest with people and help them to try, but to understand that it's a process, it'll take time, but you'll never be disappointed if you place your trust in God and if you can get even one of your family members to pray with you.
It's a good start.
Stephen, anything else?
No, nothing that hasn't already been said. I think we've done a pretty good job.
Thank you both. We started by saying that the rosary needs to be part of your everyday life, that the mysteries and the prayers and what God does while you're in that prayer with Blessed Mother interceding for you, it can really lead to some incredible rosary stories. So we've been asking people who follow Holy Cross Family Ministries, Family Rosary, to share their rosary stories. Everybody has a story of prayer, and we love the ones that are attached to people who are praying the rosary. And so we've going to share those with you. And Stephen has because he's got the best reading voice, to to share those with us. So can you share the rosary story with us?
All right. So this comes from someone named Desi. And she says, I'm a cradle Catholic, but due to family circumstances, I broke away from the church for a long time, more than 30 years. I came back to the faith only in August of 2023, and only learned to pray the rosary with my own family this year. But along the way, my faith wavered, and there was a time when my family was praying together when I started to be skeptical about it, asking myself if the rosary was just repeated words with no real meaning. I walked out of the family rosary and did my own thing. That same week, when I was out jogging, I saw an old lady standing at the nearby bus stop. She was waiting for the bus and praying her rosary at the same time. I remember it was a long rosary, so I could clearly see what she was holding. I did not approach her, but told myself it was uncanny that I'd see someone praying the rosary at 6 a.m., and that maybe God wanted to tell me something. I then started to pray the rosary again. Then in September, a crisis at work happened, a very bad one. I won't go into details, but I went into anxiety, depression, and sadness. It took me 3 weeks to get back to jogging again. This time, I saw the same old lady at the bus stop, seated and praying her pocket rosary. This time, I went to say hello to her. After getting to know her, I shared what I had been going through in my life with her, the many problems. And she told me, "Pray your rosary frequently, and Mother Mary will be with you." I also found out that this lady's name is Elizabeth, and we have become sisters in Christ, even despite our age difference. I really felt the love of Mama Mary coming through Auntie Elizabeth that morning, reminding me that I'm not alone in my journey and trials. I also believe that it was not a coincidence, but planned by God and Mother Mary for us to meet, so that the message of the rosary could come through. Auntie Elizabeth also told me to attend Mass and adoration more frequently, if possible, something I'm trying to do. Even though there's a huge crisis in my life, I'm so thankful to be filled with the love of Mary and her Son. This is my story, and I'm so grateful to have known Mary more deeply through a woman called Elizabeth.
There were a couple of things that really jumped out quickly. First of all, Rosary Mystery Day is for her was definitely the visitation because of Elizabeth coming to visit her. Mm-hmm. And she says it's not a coincidence, and I have a word for that. I call it a godcidence. Mm-hmm. I know people have God wink or God moment, but I like godcidence. So there was just, there definitely, if you can look at the world through God-colored lenses instead of rose-colored lenses, if you can really see God at work, it really will knock your socks off. 100%. I really love Desi's story. I love how vulnerable she was, that she tried to pray the rosary and thought it wasn't working. I don't understand. It's just this rote prayer. The Blessed Mother sent this beautiful soul to help Desi see that God is at work. God is always at work, and he hears your prayers. Father, what did you think of Desi's story?
It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story, I think, of encouragement. And I think it encourages me for several reasons. It reminds me that there are people out there who may have drifted away from the church, may have been hurt, whatever the reason, may have just gotten out of the habit. But they are out there, and they are searching, whether we know it or whether they know it or not. They are searching, and one of the things I love about this story too is I'm a big believer in getting outside. I love being outside. I like going to the local gas station or donut place or whatever, and just talking to people.
You've got some famous Dunkin' Donuts stories.
I do. That's a free plug. And I think the thing that the reason I believe in that is when we do come in contact with even people we don't know, there are things we learn about ourselves and about others. And the one of the key things I think in there is, like, sometimes we think, well, am I having any effect? Maybe in our families, or if we're trying to encourage them. Well, quite simply, a woman holding a rosary at a bus stop had a dramatic effect on another woman's life. So I think that's an encouragement to all of us, whether it is the rosary, whether it's someone sees us, praying grace at the local restaurant with our family before we eat, whatever, whether it's the person who knows that we're going to 9 a.m. Mass and sees us going out the door and then says in their head, I used to go to Mass. Mm-hmm. So I think the part of the beauty of it is the simplicity and how God providentially had these two women meet. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that they would have never met had the Desi not seen Elizabeth holding the rosary. And then from that, look at the fruits that came. So it's just a beautiful story. I could talk about it for a long time. I'm going to shift over to Allison now.
Well, I think one of the themes from episode 3 can definitely be how do we witness our faith and the ripple effect that can have. We are so thrilled you could be with us today, and we look forward to being with you again on our next episode. Thank you for joining us, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to Family Rosary Presents Through the Mysteries. Be sure to tune in every 2 weeks for a new episode. Please consider subscribing to the podcast, leaving feedback or a review, and recommending Through the Mysteries to your family and friends. For prayer resources or to learn more about Father Patrick Peyton, please visit familyrosary.org. Until next time, we pray you and your family will continue discovering new ways to weave the rosary into your daily life.